You know that moment when your entire world crumbles and you realize the person you trusted most has been living a double life? Well, imagine discovering your partner of 7 years has been cheating. And then imagine what happens when you decide to expose them in the most devastating way possible. This is the story of how I caught my fiancé cheating 3 weeks before our wedding, and how I turned our wedding day into the most epic revenge reveal that left him completely destroyed in front of 200 guests. My name is Sarah, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I was living a fairy tale. 29 years old, successful marketing manager at a tech startup, engaged to Michael, who I'd been with since college. We met during our sophomore year at Northwestern, both business majors, both ambitious, both planning this perfect life together. Michael was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, successful sales director at a pharmaceutical company, great with my family, and he proposed last year with my grandmother's ring in the most romantic way at the place we first met. We'd been planning our wedding for 18 months. 200 guests, destination wedding at a beautiful vineyard in Napa Valley. Everything booked and paid for. I'm talking about a $60,000 wedding that we'd both contributed to equally. Michael always insisted we split everything 50-50 because he said it made us true partners. Looking back, I realize he was just protecting his own assets, but at the time, I thought it was sweet and progressive. The guest list included his entire family from Chicago, my family from Portland, all our college friends, his work colleagues, my work colleagues, basically everyone important in both our lives. His best man was his brother Jake. My maid of honor was my sister Emma. We'd done all the traditional things: engagement party, bridal shower, bachelor and bachelorette parties just 2 weeks before the wedding. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. Michael worked late a lot, which never bothered me because I understood ambitious people. Sales directors at pharmaceutical companies travel frequently, attend conferences, wine and dine clients. I had my own demanding career and appreciated having someone who understood the grind. We lived together in a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in downtown San Francisco that we'd bought together 2 years ago. Another 50-50 split. Another thing I thought showed how equal our partnership was. But 3 weeks before our wedding, everything changed. It started with something small, something I almost ignored. Michael's phone buzzed during dinner while he was in the bathroom, and I glanced over casually. The message preview showed a text from someone named Alex that said, "Miss you already, baby. Can't wait for tonight." My stomach dropped, but I rationalized it. Maybe Alex was a nickname for Alexandria, a female colleague. Maybe it was some inside joke. People say baby casually sometimes, right? But then I started noticing things. Little things that separately meant nothing, but together painted a picture I didn't want to see. He'd started working even later, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. His phone was suddenly always face down, when before he'd leave it carelessly around. He'd get texts and immediately delete them. He started saying he was too tired for intimacy, which was completely unlike him. And there were these mysterious charges on our shared credit card for restaurants I'd never been to, flowers I'd never received, and a hotel room on a night he said he was working late at the office. The breaking point came when I decided to surprise him at work with his favorite lunch from the deli near his office. It was a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks exactly before our wedding. I called his assistant to make sure he was in, and she cheerfully confirmed he was in meetings all afternoon. Perfect. I drove to his office building, walked into the lobby of the 30-story glass tower where his company occupied the 15th floor. But when I got to the elevator, I saw him walking out of the parking garage entrance with a woman I'd never seen before. She was tall, blonde, probably mid-20s, wearing a tight red dress that screamed expensive. And Michael. Michael had his arm around her waist in a way that was definitely not professional. They were laughing intimately, the way couples laugh when they're sharing private jokes. As I watched from behind a large pillar, he leaned down and kissed her. not a peck on the cheek, not a friendly goodbye kiss. A deep, passionate kiss that lasted way too long. My hands started shaking. My heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. This was the man I was supposed to marry in 21 days. The man I'd spent 7 years building a life with. The man I'd trusted with everything. My heart, my future, my money, my dreams. I followed them at a distance, my mind racing. They got into his car together, the BMW we'd bought together last year, another 50-50 purchase. I jumped in my car and followed them, keeping several cars back. They drove to the Fairmont Hotel downtown, one of the most expensive hotels in the city. I watched from across the street as they walked in together, his hand on the small of her back, both of them looking like they owned the world. I sat in my car for 2 hours, crying, hyperventilating, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Part of me wanted to storm into that hotel and confront them. Part of me wanted to drive home and pretend I'd never seen anything. But the part of me that won out was the part that needed proof. The part that needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made any decisions. So I drove home and did what any logical person would do in the digital age. I became a detective. I started with our shared laptop, the one we used for wedding planning and bill paying. Michael was always careful with his phone, but he was careless with the laptop. I found his email still logged in, and what I discovered made me physically sick. There were months of emails between Michael and Alex, whose full name was Alexandra Winters. She was a 25-year-old marketing coordinator at a competing pharmaceutical company. The emails went back 8 months, which meant this affair had been going on for 2/3 of our engagement. 8 months of lies, 8 months of betrayal, 8 months of me planning our wedding while he was planning dates with her. The emails were explicit, romantic, and devastating. He told her things he'd never told me. He made promises to her about their future together. In one email from just 2 weeks earlier, he wrote, "After the wedding, I'll have access to all of Sarah's assets, and then we can start our real life together. Just 18 more months of playing the perfect husband, and then I'll file for divorce, and we'll be set." 18 months. He was planning to stay married to me for 18 months, just long enough to establish legal claim to half of everything I owned, and then divorce me for this woman he'd been seeing behind my back. The man I thought loved me was essentially planning to commit legal theft on a massive scale. But the emails got worse. There were detailed plans about their weekend getaways, which explained all those mysterious credit card charges. There were photos she'd sent him, photos I definitely did not want to see. And there were conversations about our wedding, where he actually complained to her about having to perform for my family and friends, calling our wedding the longest 3 days of his life, and joking about how he'd rather be anywhere else. The final straw was an email thread from just 5 days earlier, where they discussed their own future wedding. Apparently, Alexandra had already picked out her dress, and Michael had promised her a real wedding with real love once he was free from me. He'd even sent her photos of engagement rings, expensive ones, way more expensive than the ring he'd given me. I printed everything, every email, every photo, every conversation. I created a comprehensive file that proved beyond any doubt that Michael had been cheating for 8 months and planning to use me financially before discarding me. The evidence was overwhelming, devastating, and absolutely rock solid. Then I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of confronting him immediately, instead of calling off the wedding, instead of doing what any rational person might do, I decided to let him dig his own grave deeper. I decided to give him every opportunity to come clean, and when he didn't, I'd expose him in the most public, most devastating way possible. For the next 3 weeks, I played the perfect, unsuspecting fiancé. I smiled through our final wedding planning meetings. I listened to him practice his wedding vows, knowing every word was a lie. I attended our rehearsal dinner, where he gave a speech about how lucky he was to have found his soulmate and how excited he was to start our forever. I watched him hug my parents, joke with my friends, and accept congratulations from everyone who cared about us. But while I was playing my part, I was also planning the most epic revenge reveal in wedding history. I contacted a private investigator friend of my sister's, who helped me gather even more evidence. I hired a videographer to secretly record the wedding ceremony. I worked with the wedding coordinator to make some special arrangements for the reception, and I prepared a presentation that would expose Michael's betrayal to every single person who mattered in both our lives. The morning of our wedding arrived. Beautiful sunny day in Napa Valley, perfect weather, perfect venue, perfect setup for what was about to become the most unforgettable wedding anyone in attendance would ever witness. Michael had no idea what was coming. As far as he knew, he was about to marry the woman he'd been successfully deceiving for 8 months, secure in his plan to legally steal half my assets before running off with his mistress. The ceremony itself went according to plan. Michael said his vows with a straight face, promising to love, honor, and cherish me for the rest of his life. I said mine too, though I'd rewritten them completely, and he didn't notice. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Michael kissed me like he meant it, probably relieved that his performance was almost over. But then came the reception, and that's where my real plan went into action. Instead of the traditional first dance, I'd arranged for a special presentation. I stood up, took the microphone, and addressed our 200 guests with the biggest smile on my face. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this special day with Michael and me," I began. "Marriage is about trust, honesty, and partnership. It's about sharing everything, your hopes, your dreams, your future, and apparently, according to Michael, your assets." I could see confusion starting to spread across the crowd. Michael looked puzzled, but was still smiling, probably thinking I was just giving an unusual thank you speech. "I want to share with you all something very special about my new husband," I continued. "Something that shows exactly what kind of man he really is." Roll the presentation. The giant screen that was supposed to show our wedding slideshow instead lit up with Michael's emails to Alexandra. Every single one of them. His promises to her, his plans to divorce me, his complaints about our wedding, his detailed timeline for stealing my assets. All of it, blown up on a 12-foot screen for everyone to see. The room went completely silent. I watched Michael's face go from confusion to horror to panic in about 3 seconds. His brother Jake's mouth fell open. My parents looked shocked and confused. His parents looked mortified. And our friends started pulling out their phones to record what was happening. But I wasn't done yet. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "I'd like you to meet Alexandra Winters, Michael's girlfriend of 8 months. Alexandra, are you here? Oh, wait, you're not invited to the wedding, but don't worry. Michael has plans for a special wedding just for you two once he's finished stealing everything I own." Michael stood up, his face red, looking like he wanted to run. "Sarah, stop this right now," he said through gritted teeth. "Stop what, honey?" I replied sweetly. "I'm just sharing the truth with our family and friends. Isn't honesty the foundation of marriage? Oh, wait, I forgot. You don't actually believe in marriage. According to your emails, you think marriage is just a legal way to steal someone's money." The crowd was murmuring now. People were standing up. Phones were recording everything. Michael's groomsmen looked mortified. My bridesmaids looked like they wanted to attack him. And both sets of parents looked like they were trying to figure out whether to be angry or embarrassed or both. "The good news," I continued, "is that I've already filed for annulment. This marriage was based on fraud and deception, which makes it legally void. The better news is that I've also filed a civil lawsuit against Michael for fraud, breach of trust, and attempting to steal assets through false pretenses. My lawyer says I have an excellent case." Michael finally found his voice. "You can't do this," he said, his face now completely red. This is insane. You're humiliating both of us. I'm not humiliating both of us, Michael, I replied calmly. I'm exposing you for what you are. A liar, a cheater, and a would-be thief. The only thing I'm guilty of is trusting you. At that point, Michael's brother Jake stood up and grabbed Michael's arm. We're leaving, he said firmly. This is over. But I had one more surprise. Actually, Jake, you might want to stay for this next part. Michael, remember when you used our joint credit card to buy Alexandra that $5,000 necklace last month? The one you told me was for your mother's birthday? Well, I reported it as fraud, which technically it was since you used our joint funds to buy gifts for your mistress without my knowledge or consent. The police are very interested in talking to you. And as if on cue, 2 officers who I'd arranged to be present stepped forward. They didn't arrest Michael at the wedding, but they did inform him that he needed to come to the station for questioning about credit card fraud and that he shouldn't leave town. The entire room was in chaos now. People were talking, recording, taking photos, arguing, consoling me, condemning Michael. It was exactly the spectacle I'd planned for. Michael's reputation was completely destroyed in front of everyone who mattered. His family was humiliated. His professional network was there to witness his complete downfall. And everyone who'd invested emotionally in our relationship now knew exactly what kind of person he really was. Michael and his groomsmen left immediately, followed by his mortified parents. My family rallied around me, along with most of our mutual friends who were absolutely disgusted by what they'd learned. The party continued, but it became a celebration of my freedom rather than our marriage. In the weeks that followed, the revenge continued to unfold. The annulment was granted immediately based on the evidence of fraud. The civil lawsuit resulted in Michael having to pay me back for all the money he'd spent on Alexandra, plus damages for emotional distress. The credit card fraud investigation led to charges that damaged his professional reputation permanently. But the best part was watching his relationship with Alexandra fall apart. Apparently, she'd only been interested in him because she thought he was wealthy and available. When she learned that he was broke from legal fees and now had a reputation as a cheater and fraud, she dumped him immediately. The private investigator I'd hired confirmed that she'd moved on to dating someone else within a month. Michael lost his job because the pharmaceutical industry is small and word travels fast about character issues. He had to move back in with his parents because he couldn't afford his own place after paying legal fees and restitution. His social media accounts disappeared because he couldn't handle the public humiliation. And according to mutual friends, he'd become a complete social pariah. As for me, the revenge was incredibly satisfying, but more importantly, it was necessary. I needed to protect myself financially and emotionally from someone who'd planned to systematically destroy my life for his own gain. The public nature of the exposure ensured that everyone in our social and professional circles knew exactly what had happened, which protected me from any attempts he might make to spin the story in his favor. 6 months later, I'm thriving. I kept the condo since it was 50% mine anyway. I got promoted at work partly because my boss was so impressed with how I handled the situation with such strategic thinking and grace under pressure. I started dating again and met someone wonderful who actually values honesty and integrity. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even. It's exposing the truth in a way that protects other people from making the same mistake you almost made. The wedding cost $60,000, but watching Michael's face when his lies were exposed to 200 people, that was priceless. Sometimes the universe gives you the perfect opportunity to serve justice, and sometimes you have to create that opportunity yourself. I chose to create it, and I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat.